I stepped out of the taxi in full uniform, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, heart heavy with 25 years of silence. The air outside Eugene, Oregon, was sharp with late September cold, carrying the smell of pine and burnt leaves. The house in front of me looked smaller than I remembered. The roof newer, the porch cleaner, but that old weather vane still creaked with every gust of wind. A motion-sensing camera above the gate tilted with a mechanical buzz, scanning the face of a woman it hadn't seen since 1988. I waited for the click, for the sound of a gate unlocking, for someone, anyone, to say, "Welcome home." But nothing came. I pressed the intercom, thumb trembling. A sharp static crackled in response, then silence. I tried again. "Veronica," I said, voice hoarse from disuse. "It's me, Evelyn." The front door opened a few seconds later. She stepped out slowly, her frame stiff beneath a tailored slate blazer and pearl earrings. Her hair was pulled tight in the same bun she wore at her high school graduation, just grayer now. She looked down at me from the porch like I was a census taker or a reporter. "I'm calling the police," she said flatly, already tapping her phone. "There's someone trying to enter the property, claims to be family." The words punched the breath out of my lungs. "Veronica, what are you doing?" She didn't blink. "This isn't your home anymore." I stepped forward instinctively. The gate didn't move. "I just got discharged. I stopped. I thought maybe I'd see Mom. Or Dad." "You should have thought of them before you disappeared," she snapped. "We moved on. You're not in the will. You're not even on the deed." The metal of the gate dug into my palms as I gripped it, willing myself not to shake. "I grew up here." "That tree," I pointed to the maple that still leaned toward the attic window. "I broke my wrist falling out of it. The scar's still here." Veronica's jaw tightened. "You always made everything about you." A cruiser pulled around the corner. Blue lights flashed. No sirens. Two officers stepped out. One older, one barely past academy age. The younger officer looked between us. "Ma'am, can I see your ID?" I handed him my military ID and discharge papers. "This is my parents' house." The older officer looked at the screen on his radio. "This property is registered under Pine Grove Ventures, LLC. No listing for Evelyn Rhodes." My mouth opened, then closed again. My fingers were numb. Veronica folded her arms, smug. "Told you." The officer sighed. "Unless you have legal proof of residency, we'll have to ask you to step away from the property." I backed up slowly. My boots hit the curb. I didn't cry when they took my clearance badge. I didn't cry when I coded in a mobile tent in Kabul. But I cried now, standing in front of the house that raised me, as the door shut and the light went out behind the curtains. Then my phone buzzed. No name. Just a message. "You should never have come back." The next morning, I sat across from Nadia Park, my old law school roommate, in a corner booth of a diner that hadn't changed since the 90s. Formica table, chipped ceramic mugs, and the scent of burnt coffee grounding me more than any home ever had. Nadia looked sharper than I remembered. Sleek ponytail, tailored trench coat, tablet glowing in her hands. "I checked the county recorder's office first," she said, scrolling through a file. "The property's been listed under Pine Grove Ventures, LLC for 18 months now. Transferred from a private trust just before that." I blinked. "A trust?" My grandfather never created a trust. "He left the house to me directly. I have a scanned copy of the original will." Nadia nodded. "And yet, here's the transfer deed." She flipped the tablet toward me. There it was, a clean scan with a digital signature in a font that looked eerily close to mine. Except I had never signed it. My stomach turned. "I didn't sign this," I said quietly. "I know. I compared it to your federal tax forms on file. The signature's traced, probably lifted from one of your returns." She tapped the screen again, pulling up the notary seal. "Here's the fun part. This guy, Alvin Mercer, his license expired 2 years before this was filed. He's under review by the state bar for falsifying DMV affidavits." I pressed my fingers to my temple, trying to push back the rising nausea. "So, it's forged. Fully forged." "Yes," Nadia said. And you're not going to like this next part. She brought up a second file, a scanned warranty deed. Apparently, your sister sold the house to Pine Grove Ventures for $15,000. 15,000? I stared. The house is worth over $500,000. She probably wanted to transfer it quietly, no alarms. And here's where it gets messier. The buyer, Pine Grove, is registered under a P.O. box in Wyoming. No names listed. I exhaled slowly. They buried me on paper. Nadia looked up from the screen. You were overseas when this went through, right? I was testifying in a contract audit case in D.C. The week this deed was filed, I was on a secure base in Quantico. So they knew you couldn't object in real time. Convenient. I leaned back, the fake leather booth pressing into my shoulders. They erased me. My own sister. Nadia hesitated. Evelyn, you need to know this isn't just about inheritance. If a shell company's involved, one tied to a revoked notary, and forged documents, this could be part of a laundering pipeline. I looked out the window, my childhood street blurred behind a sheet of Oregon rain. Then I need to know what's inside that house. Before she could respond, the waitress dropped off the check. And right behind her, a man brushed past our booth. Mid-40s, work boots, hood up. He didn't look at me. But as he passed, he slid something beneath my napkin. A folded piece of paper. I waited until he left, then opened it. If you're really Evelyn, meet me behind Roosevelt Gym. 10:30 p.m. Come alone. The rain had stopped by the time I made it to the back alley behind Roosevelt Gym. The streetlights were old, flickering amber like half-forgotten memories, casting just enough glow to make the dark feel deeper. I wore plain black, no uniform, no name tag. Just a windbreaker and a camera clipped discreetly to the strap of my messenger bag, already recording. At exactly 10:30, a figure emerged from behind the fence near the dumpster. Evelyn Rhodes? He asked, voice low and cautious. I nodded. You left the note? He glanced over his shoulder before stepping closer. Mid-40s, lean frame, sun-damaged skin. The kind of man who'd spent a lifetime working with his hands. I'm Mason Daly. I used to do contracting for your grandfather. Back before Veronica moved in. The name clicked. He helped rebuild the back porch when I was a teenager. He used to bring lemon drops in his tool belt. I live down the block, he said. I see things, and I've been seeing things I can't ignore. Like what? He looked around again before answering. Unmarked vans, no license plates. Show up once or twice a week, always after midnight. They back right into the old garden path, unload crates, then disappear. No one ever stays long. Except him. Who? Dominic, your sister's husband. He's always the one giving orders. I tightened my jaw. What's in the crates? Mason shook his head. I don't know, but there's something else. The house has had spikes in electrical usage. My cousin works for the city, said the basement is pulling enough power to run industrial equipment. Maybe refrigeration. Maybe surveillance. My thoughts raced. There were no renovation permits filed, right? None. And here's the thing. A few weeks ago, I saw them bring in what looked like satellite dish equipment. Big, covered, military surplus type. A chill crawled up my spine. Military? He hesitated. Look, I'm not saying they're dealing weapons or intel or whatever, but I know this. Whatever they're doing in there, they don't want the public seeing it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a mini audio recorder. I'm going to place this near the foundation vent. It's angled toward the rear of the house. If they talk, I'll catch it. You be careful, Mason warned. Your sister told people you were unstable. Said the war changed you. I smiled, thin and bitter. They always say that when they're trying to discredit someone who might expose them. That night, I returned to the alley alone. I moved slowly through the backyards, keeping low, stepping only on grass or thick dirt to muffle the sound. When I reached the old chain-link fence, I crouched behind a half-rotted compost bin and placed the recorder near the vent just below the window well. Then I waited. At 12:17 a.m., the trucks arrived. 2 of them. No headlights, no plates. 4 men stepped out. One was clearly armed. Another carried a clipboard. Then came Dominic, calm, confident. He didn't speak, just gestured toward the basement door. And then I heard it, a voice crackling through the vent, louder than the others. If Evelyn finds out, sever the tie. No warning. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that voice. It was my mother. I didn't sleep. I sat in my car 2 blocks away, listening to the recording over and over again, my headphones pressed tight against my ears. The quality was rough, but that voice, measured, cold, and undeniably hers, cut through the static like a blade. If Evelyn finds out, sever the tie. No warning. My own mother, the woman who once braided my hair before piano recitals, now plotting like I was an inconvenience to be erased. By morning, the recorder was gone. Someone had been there. Someone new. I called Jasper Lee, my old contact from the office of the Inspector General. He picked up on the first ring. "I need a trace," I said, "and a deep one." "I thought you retired," he replied. "I did," I said, "but the people who stole my house didn't." Within hours, Jasper set up a secure Dropbox. I uploaded the digital version of the forged deed, the notary stamp, and screenshots of the Pine Grove LLC documents Nadia pulled. He ran everything through 3 private databases. What came back made my stomach twist. "Pine Grove Ventures is a shell," he said flatly during our next call. "Registered in Wyoming, but flagged by an overseas compliance firm 2 years ago for possible laundering tied to defense contract rerouting." Rerouting? Yeah. Misused funds, military-grade equipment orders, fake bids, that kind of thing. And Dominic? Dominic Lynn used to consult for a now-defunct logistics company called Carter Lane Solutions. That name showed up in a 2019 congressional hearing for inflated procurement invoices. It was quietly buried. I paced my small rental, the blinds drawn, my breath catching in my throat. "They used my credentials," I said, realization settling like lead in my gut. "My federal clearance, my history. That's how they passed compliance checks." "Likely," Jasper said. "They needed a name it with credibility. You were the perfect ghost." I turned to my laptop. There, in the corner of my encrypted drive, was a scan of my grandfather's original will, the one that clearly listed me as the sole heir. I opened it. Dated, signed, archived long before I left for Kabul. I texted Nadia. "I need to file an injunction, now." Within 90 minutes, she had paperwork drafted. Fraud, forgery. Request for immediate freeze of all transactions relating to the property. But we needed more. Jasper pinged again. "Check your email," he said. Inside was a metadata report. IP logs tracing the creation of the forged documents. The IP address? Registered to Veronica Rhodes, residential modem. Same home, same location. Jasper paused. "You're not dealing with amateurs. They've done this before, just not to someone who knows how to fight back." I stared at the screen. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. One line. "You're playing with fire. I have your OIG audit file. Want to see what it says about you?" I didn't flinch. I just screenshot the message and forwarded it to Jasper. "This is getting bigger," I whispered. He replied instantly. "Then let's burn it all down." With facts. I hadn't stepped into a bank vault in over a decade. But as the guard slid open the steel door and handed me the small lockbox I had opened only once since my grandfather died, my hands trembled. Inside was a flash drive. I had almost forgotten it existed. Encrypted, marked only with a red dot. My grandfather had given it to me the summer before I left for Quantico. "In case they ever try to rewrite the story," he had whispered, slipping it into my palm like a sacred thing. Back in my rental, I plugged it into my offline laptop. What appeared on the screen stopped my breath. A grainy video, time-stamped 14 years ago. My grandfather sat in his study, wearing a faded cardigan, sunlight glowing behind him through the lace curtains. He looked directly into the camera. "This house goes to my granddaughter, Evelyn Rhodes," he said. "Not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. She kept this family name clean when others didn't." He tapped the desk where the will lay flat, unaltered, signed, notarized. She's the one I trust. And if you're watching this, Evelyn, it means they've tried to take that trust from you. I covered my mouth, the tears coming fast now, not from weakness, but from finally being seen. I called Nadia. I have the kill shot, I said. 2 hours later, we were at the county clerk's office in downtown Eugene. This time, I wore my full uniform, pressed, decorated, and undeniable. Veronica was already there, dressed in a gray wrap coat and flanked by her attorney. She looked up, smiled thinly, until she saw me. Then she saw Nadia, holding the leather case marked evidence packet. Her face went pale. "What is it?" she asked, rising. "We're here to file an injunction," Nadia said calmly, "on the grounds of forged property transfer, signature falsification, and fraudulent concealment of inheritance." Veronica scoffed. "You can't prove that." I pulled the tablet from my coat pocket and pressed play. My grandfather's voice filled the quiet office like a ghost. "This house goes to Evelyn Rhodes." Veronica froze. The clerk, a woman in her 60s with eagle-sharp eyes, leaned closer to watch the rest of the video. Veronica's lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously. Nadia placed the printed packet of metadata, deed comparisons, and the original notarized will in front of the clerk. "We're also requesting a freeze on all transactions involving Pine Grove Ventures LLC pending a federal investigation." Veronica's voice broke. "You don't know what you've walked into." I turned to her, finally meeting her eyes. "No," I said. "You don't know what I've brought with me." As we left the office, the clerk called after us. "Lieutenant Rhodes," she said, her voice measured. "We'll be in touch shortly." Outside, the wind picked up, pulling at the edges of my coat. Nadia looked over. "That was checkmate," she whispered. I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. The board just flipped. The next morning, I sat in my rental's kitchenette, blinds drawn, laptop open, coffee untouched. Lines of code flickered on one screen. On the other, spreadsheets, bank records, vendor trails, a breadcrumb path through fraud. Jasper's voice came through my encrypted line. Dominic filed 3 procurement forms in 2021 under a company called Neotrax Systems. The forms were flagged for compliance irregularities, then quietly approved by someone at the Department of Supply Chain Operations. I narrowed my eyes. "I know that division." He continued. "The kicker? 2 of those contracts were awarded using documentation tied to your clearance file." My throat went dry. "They used my name again." Jasper exhaled. "You were listed as Compliance Assurance Advisor. Forged, of course. But enough to push the contracts through. I want every transaction routed through Neotrax cross-checked. Every line item, every approval signature." "I already started," he said. "And guess who authorized the financial transfers on the vendor side?" I didn't answer. I already knew. "Veronica Rhodes," he said anyway. "Listed as finance director. It was coordinated, calculated, a web of forged paperwork, shell companies, and one stolen identity, mine." A ping lit up on my second monitor. "Nadia. Meet me at the old train station in 30. We've got someone." At the far end of the rusting platform, a woman in her 40s waited. Sleek coat, nervous energy, glancing around like shadows might follow her. "This is Tamara Denton," Nadia whispered. "She used to handle back-office contracts for Neotrax. She came forward after seeing your name in one of the files." I approached slowly. Tamara didn't offer a handshake. She just spoke. "I didn't know they were using your credentials. At least, not at first. But once I saw the clearance codes, I got scared. That stuff's federal. They said you'd abandoned your post, that you wouldn't come back." I stayed silent, letting her fill the space. "Your mother signed a compliance memo. I don't think she understood what it meant, but she signed it." My heart squeezed in my chest. "She was involved?" "She told us you'd never return," Tamara said softly. "Said you'd made your choice, that you were gone. And if anything came back, we were to notify Dominic immediately." She reached into her bag and handed me a sealed envelope. This has a log of every signed document tied to your name. They're still using your clearance data, and they're trying to wipe it now that you've surfaced. My hands shook as I took it. They built an empire on my silence, I said quietly. Tamara looked down, and now you're speaking. Back at the apartment, I opened the envelope. Inside were 4 forms with federal headers. My name, my badge number, my digital signature, copied from a 10-year-old DoD access file. They weren't just laundering money, they were using me to do it. My phone buzzed. A message from Jasper. One of the offshore accounts just went dark. They're trying to cover their tracks. We need to move. Now! I looked down at the forms, at the fake signatures, at the trail that led straight back to the people who raised me. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was a war. 2 hours later, Nadia and I sat in the glass-walled conference room of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Portland. The walls were bare, the lighting harsh. Every word we spoke would be recorded. Leo Martinez, Assistant U.S. Attorney for Cyber and Financial Crimes, reviewed the packet in front of him, flipping slowly through each page like he already knew the gravity of what it contained. The forged deeds, the fake procurement contracts, the digital logs, my stolen clearance codes. I won't lie, he said at last, setting the folder down. We've seen misuse of government data before, but this level of orchestration, using a veteran's identity, leveraging federal security credentials, falsifying real estate titles, this isn't family drama, it's federal conspiracy. I kept my posture still, professional. But inside, a storm churned. We're requesting subpoenas, Nadia said. For Dominic Lynn, Veronica Rhodes, and Cynthia Rhodes, Evelyn's mother. We believe each has played a role in asset laundering, fraud, and contract manipulation. Martinez nodded. Based on this, we'll also begin coordination with the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. If these procurement numbers line up with military systems, this could fall under national security fraud. The room went silent, then I spoke. I want to testify. But until the subpoenas are executed, I want protective status. No public leaks, no press releases. If they know what I have, they'll run, Martinez finished for me. Or retaliate. They've already tried. He glanced at my file again, then leaned back in his chair. You'll get temporary protective designation, anonymous in filings, but once charges are filed formally, your name becomes part of the record. That's fine, I said. By then, I'll be ready to speak. Out loud. 2 days later, the subpoenas were approved by a federal judge. That morning, Veronica was served at her nonprofit's downtown gala. She was mid-speech, accepting an award for Women in Business. A U.S. Marshal stepped forward, handed her the envelope, and spoke with crisp finality. You are being summoned under federal subpoena for alleged conspiracy and fraud. The smile dropped from her face like a stone. Across town, Dominic was pulled from his Range Rover outside their gated home. His expression didn't change. He just handed over his sunglasses and reached for his lawyer's card. Later that afternoon, I received a call. Blocked number. But I knew the voice instantly. Evelyn, my mother said, quiet and brittle. How could you do this to us? I let the silence stretch. You signed it, I said. You helped them erase me. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought it was just a formality? I cut in. You thought I'd never come back, so it didn't matter? She didn't answer, just exhaled, slow and shaking. This isn't revenge, I said. This is truth. You built a lie, and now you're living in it. I ended the call. That night, Nadia came by with a thick folder of financial summaries, offshore accounts, shell companies, donation fraud. They were smart, she said, placing the folder down. But not smarter than you. I looked at the wall of notes behind her, strings, maps, printed metadata. They underestimated one thing, I said. What? I turned toward her. That I kept receipts, all of them. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not physically, though the air conditioning hummed through the vents, but emotionally, sterile. No warmth, no welcome. Just hard benches, steel edges, and the cold presence of consequence. I stood beside Nadia at the plaintiff's table. Across from us sat Veronica, jaw locked, staring straight ahead. Dominic fiddled with his tie, eyes darting to the back of the room. My mother, Cynthia, sat apart from them, her face expressionless. Her silence had always been her most brutal weapon. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a voice like stone, looked over her glasses. "Ms. Rhodes," she said to me, "you may proceed with your testimony." I stepped forward. No uniform this time. Just a dark blazer, simple blouse, and a silver pin from my final audit mission, the only insignia I needed. My name is Evelyn Rhodes. I served as a federal auditor for 25 years, with clearance to investigate military and government contracting fraud. I paused, then continued, voice steady. In 2022, while still deployed under federal assignment, my identity was used to falsify procurement contracts linked to a company called Neotrax Systems. That company, BAT-Al, and two others, received federal payments using documents bearing my digital signature and clearance codes. I never authorized those contracts. I turned toward the judge. The individuals behind this fraud are seated in this courtroom. They didn't just steal money, they stole my name, my history, my legacy. Nadia handed the clerk a flash drive. On screen, documents appeared. A procurement form with my name forged. A metadata trail linking it to Veronica's home IP. A bank statement showing a $150,000 transfer into Dominic's business account the day after the forged contract cleared. The judge's brow furrowed as each item was displayed. Then came the audio. Crackled, grainy, but damning. "If Evelyn finds out, sever the tie, no warning." My mother's voice. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Veronica's lawyer rose. "Objection! The audio!" Nadia cut in. "Authenticated, Your Honor. Time-stamped and verified by a federal digital forensics expert." Dominic stood suddenly, knocking over his water glass. "This is insane! She's lying! This is a vendetta!" The judge slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Lin." I didn't flinch. "This wasn't a misunderstanding," I said. "It was a conspiracy. They falsified legal documents to steal a house my grandfather left me, then used that property to funnel illegal federal funds through shell companies, using my name." The judge turned to the defense. "Do the defendants have anything to say?" Veronica stood slowly. Her voice was soft. "We thought she was gone. We thought she didn't care." Well, I stared at her. "You didn't wait to find out. You just started building your life on the belief I'd never return." The judge nodded slowly. "Given the presented evidence and sworn testimony, the court finds sufficient cause for criminal prosecution. A full trial is set to begin in 3 weeks. All restraining orders, asset freezes, and protective measures will remain in place." The gavel fell. It wasn't over, but denial had shattered. Outside, the sky was cloudy, the air heavy. Nadia stood beside me. "They'll fight harder now," she said. I looked at the courthouse steps, and the press already gathering. "Good," I said. "Let them finally fight someone who fights back." 3 weeks passed in a blur of headlines, legal motions, and whispered apologies too late to matter. The trial was swift. Veronica Rhodes, 7 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and property tampering. Dominic Lin, 10 years without parole for misuse of federal credentials, contract manipulation, and laundering. Cynthia Rhodes, 5-year suspended sentence, stripped of nonprofit status, and placed under federal supervision. There were no tears in the courtroom, no breakdowns, just consequences, cold and final. When the gavel fell for the last time, I didn't cheer. I just closed my notebook, stood tall, and walked out into a morning sun that didn't feel so heavy anymore. Outside, reporters clustered near the gate. "Evelyn, do you forgive them?" someone shouted. I paused, turned just slightly. "I don't carry revenge," I said. "I carry records." Then I walked on. Weeks later, I stood in the National Federal Service Library in Washington, D.C., staring at the dark granite wall near the far end of the Hall of Recognition. I had walked by that wall as a junior auditor fresh out of Quantico, wondering what kind of people earned a place here. People who uncovered billion-dollar fraud schemes. People who stood up when everyone else stayed silent. And now, there it was. Evelyn Rhodes, federal auditor, beacon of accountability, valor, service, integrity. I didn't cry. I stood in silence, my reflection faint in the polished stone. A mirror layered with time, pain, and truth. Behind me, footsteps. Jasper, wearing his old Marine cap, and Nadia, arms crossed, smiling softly. "Looks good up there," Jasper said. "She earned it," Nadia added. I nodded. We all did. We exited together, the air crisp with early spring, soft wind pushing through cherry blossoms overhead. Later that afternoon, I returned to the house. Yes. Oh. See? It's me. That house. The one they fought to steal. It was quiet now, empty. The shell of so many battles, and the ground where I reclaimed my name. I didn't come to move in. I came to let go. I met with the city council the next morning and signed the final papers. The property would be donated and converted into a transitional housing shelter for female veterans. A safe place. A starting place. Something real. As I handed over the keys, the councilwoman asked, "Do you have a name in mind for the building?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. The Rhodes House. That evening, I wrote one final note. I didn't send it. I just folded it, placed it on the mantel inside the empty living room, and turned off the light one last time. It read, "You tried to erase me, but I kept every piece. And in the end, truth outlived you all." Evelyn. I walked out with nothing in my hands but everything I came to find. My name, my honor, and the proof that some legacies can't be stolen.